Hey everyone, welcome. Give it a couple seconds for everyone to get in. All right, Laura, what do you think? Should we start?
Yeah, let's get started.
All right. Hi everyone. So welcome back to another episode of Behind the Pages. I'm Sal Marino and I'm joined today by my colleagues
Laura O'Connor, Director of Membership for CFMA.
and Lindsay Sullivan.
Hi, I'm
Oh,
Lucy Sullivan, Member Experience Manager.
Lindsay's working behind the scenes today. She's going to be monitoring the chat, collecting your questions, keeping everything running smoothly. But we are really glad you're here. As a reminder, Behind the Pages takes a fresh look at standout content coming out of CFMA Building Profits magazine. Each month, we pick a featured article, we bring the authors together live, and we give you a chance to go deeper, ask questions, and connect with other construction financial professionals.
okay. A few quick notes before we start. We're going to run about an hour. We'll open with a discussion with our authors and then move into your Q&A. You can drop your questions in the chat at any time, and Lindsay will be collecting them for us. Participation is welcome throughout, so go ahead and keep those questions coming. And today's session is being recorded, and we'll send the recording out to everyone who is registered after the session. Now let's get into it. Sal?
Let's do it. So today's featured article is The Hidden Costs of Rework, Protect Profit and Prevent Risk. It's from the March-April 2026 issue of CFMA Building Profits. Joining us today are two highly respected construction safety and risk management professionals. Brian Clarke, CSP, is the founder of Quality Safety Times in Battleground, Washington, with more than 40 years in construction safety and risk management. And Kimberly Gamble is a senior safety consultant at GEW in Vancouver, Washington, with more than 30 years in construction safety and risk management. Brian, Kimberly, thank you both for being here. It's going to be a pleasure to have this talk with you.
Morning. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, Kimberly, to kick us off, what motivated you to write this article and what gap were you hoping to fill in the conversation around rework and financial risk?
So I started my career in the insurance world, in the insurance industry, and there we were taught about um, uh, cost and claims cost, not necessarily worrying about compliance. So, my background in the risk side was always based on a financial perspective from a risk standpoint. But it's fair to say, and you need to say that there's two different types of risk, in my opinion. The first is financial, and you can classify that however you like. And the second part is humanitarian. Okay, and we'll get into humanitarian a little bit later on. But just to expand on that, in the construction industry over the last couple of decades, we've done a really good job with reducing employee injuries. And you can tell that just by the way we measure. 40, 50 years ago, we measured injuries by how many fatalities per million man hours or per $1 million of work. Today we measure near misses. So just by the definition of how we measure you can see the success. So if we look just at the financial risk, employee injuries is not our biggest risk financially. Rework is. And I think we're going to get later on into some studies and how to defend that. Excuse me. But I think the best way to do that, and just a short little example I had it with a client, it's been probably a month ago now, is we were talking, he's the CEO of a construction company in the Pacific Northwest. And I was talking about losses and risks and quality control and whatnot. I asked him, how big was your last project? And he said around 50 million. So I said, on that project, how many injuries did you have? And he rattled off, busted finger, something in the eye. Long story short, we came up with about $10,000 worth of loss. So if you look at it from a financial standpoint, what is that? That's about 0.002, two zeros
Right.
of the cost of the project. Then I asked him, what was your rework cost? And he looked at me and says, you really don't want to know. And I looked at him and said, I don't care. It's not my money. It's your money. Right. And he said about 15%. So then I asked him, how many safety people do you have throughout the company? He had 38. How many quality control people do you have? And he hemmed and hawed and he said, 8. So I said, you have 38 people looking at 2/100ths of your loss, and you have 8 people looking at 15% of your loss. I said, your ratios are wrong.
Yeah.
That's kind of was probably the best example of how and why we're getting into this. What is the gap? The gap right now is educating management, all levels of management, what rework really costs.
So when you say build it right the first time culture, who should own that? Is it a field problem, finance problem, a leadership problem? What's your take
Yes.
on that?
So if you look at risk and risk control, I don't believe solely in top down. I don't believe solely in bottom up. I believe you have to have both. And the CEO leads the culture. We're going to get a little bit later. The craft people actually are the ones who build the buildings. And with your audience, the financial people, they're the ones that look at the money and talk about the money. And we talk about claims cost in financial. Sometimes we talk about claims cost with uh, um, schedule delays. Sometimes, especially if it's insurable type claim. But we're not talking generally about rework costs because it's really, really hard to measure. And I guess we'll get into that a little bit later on too.
So when you mentioned like experience modification rating in the article as a strong predictor on its own, what right now would a financial leader actually look at?
In reference to,
Just how like when us having when you talk about like let's say uninsurable loss and when we were from the stuff from the article, what would be one thing that a financial leader now could look at to help change their perspective on rework and how, like your story about the CEO with you have, 8 people looking at rework, but many more looking at safety. What's one thing that a financial leader now could do or change quickly?
I think that probably the biggest thing they could do is go out and look at their own company, look at their own project, meet with their own project superintendents, and we can show them some tools they can use here in a minute
Okay.
that actually get and believe what I'm saying. Use your own numbers. Don't believe what
Right.
I'm saying. Nobody on your group, well, probably knows me, right? So I wrote an article. Kim and I wrote an article. Okay. But I would say take some of our tools, go out into the field, not in the management, go out in the field, get a field superintendent who's going to be honest with you and ask them about the cost of rework. Take our worksheet. We can get into that in a few minutes. Take it
Mm.
out there and look at it and sit down with them. Take them to lunch, get them off the site, get the attention, things that will grab their attention, get it away from them, and just talk to them about rework. And
Okay.
and the magic will be is rework is not necessarily measured. Okay.
Right.
So think about this from the standpoint is we teach our people, no matter what the profession, whether it's financial, whether it's a contractor, whether it's a safety person, or whatever, we teach our people to look at and solve problems at the lowest level possible. Right. So let's pretend it's a mechanical contractor. And the mechanical contractor's apprentice puts the valve in backward. The journeyman or the foreman catches it, yells at the apprentice, go replace it, go to the van, swap it around, blah, blah, blah. They get it done. It's done. Nobody
Right.
knows. It's never measured. Why? There's no insurance recall. There's no recovery for that from an insurance perspective. So why are we measuring it? We don't. And that's what makes this so hard to educate people is there's no database on, show me the rework cost of mechanical contractors like there are at the Department of Labor. You can look at the records and see what the claims have been. There's, to the best of my knowledge, there's no database of rework costs because it's not
Right.
insurable. Most of it's not insurable. So I
So,
guess my thing would be one of your members would be take some of our tools, go out in the field, identify what the financial impact has been, identify what the schedule impact has been on your work, not what some researcher says, not what,
Right.
you know, Sal, Laura, and Kim are saying.
Right.
Go look at your work and do one, do five, do 20. Get an intern, have an intern go do it. You will be shocked. Your readers, your will. I could use some colorful metaphors the first time I went through some examples of this, which is not appropriate because it's construction. This is built where we walk through accidents or rework claims, and then we put a multiplier in about what's your profit ratio and how much work would have to be done to make up for that loss. And it is mind-boggling, the numbers involved.
Well, let's get into some of those numbers because the article cites rework costs from 0.05% to 20% of contract value. What what do you think drives that dramatic range between projects?
So we did some very scientific research to get those numbers. We went to Google and typed it in.
But we found research. We didn't just ask
Yeah.
Google.
So we Kim is 100% correct. We actually
Yeah,
just typed in research, I don't remember exact words, research, commercial construction, financial impact from rework, or some words like that. And a whole bunch of articles came up. So I actually had a professor out of Central Washington University do a white paper, basically a paragraph on, this author says this, highlights it, and then you can link to it. So it's a white paper on our webpage if somebody wants to go look at it, or they can do their own research. Really, it was that simple. We just typed it in. Quite bluntly, we then followed it up with the same words, except on financial impact, we did schedule impact. So your people, your audience that is involved with like loss or delay claims, that's a huge number. It's absolutely huge. But literally what we did is we took articles, we took the Google search articles, read the articles, and that's where we got the range. So the follow-up question would be that is why is the range so different from
right,
the research articles? And it's one, how do you define rework? Because even Kim and I don't always agree with the definition of rework. Okay. Um, what is a project? Are we talking about a hotel? Are we talking about a chip manufacturing plant?
right.
Right. And then you're also talking about the culture of the people reporting to the researcher. And this kind of goes into Kim's background more, but how many people want to admit that we had a mistake? I don't want to tell
Right.
my boss I had a mistake. Right. And it takes a special culture in a company or an organization to encourage people coming forward with mistakes so they can learn from lessons. Right. Lessons learned. So that would be some of the reasons you have such a gap. The industry's kind of rule of thumb says 10 to 15% of the
Okay.
project value. Either way, go on the low end, go on 10%. $50 million project, you've got $5 million worth of losses recovered directly related to rework. You're not even close of that on employee losses. Now, I feel comfortable saying that because I spent my life working in injury prevention. So I have no problem standing in front of an audience and saying, hey, you're focusing your efforts in the wrong area, right? From a resource allocation perspective, if you look at it only from a financial standpoint, but your big losses are in rework. Now we
Yeah.
can't hurt people. We don't have people, we don't build buildings. And if you've ever had a bad accident or fatality on your project, that humanitarian loss, you will never forget it. But the
That-
financial loss is in rework.
So let's take a moment now and talk about the connection between safety programs and quality programs and why they're managed separately. Um, can you give us a little insight on that? If it's an org chart problem, a budget problem, mindset problem?
Some companies manage them together under a loss or a risk management. So, and some people have a title of EHSQ, Environmental Safety, Health, and Quality. Some companies don't even address it. And that's back to the education standpoint I think a lot of people just don't know what the dollars really are, right? They just don't understand the dollars. No one's explained it to them. Okay. Um, the parallels part of your question, in my opinion, if you look at processes and content, the processes in risk management are very similar, in my opinion, between safety and quality control. It's, we have orientations. Well, we should have orientations for safety and quality. They should be mingled, but the content is different. Okay. We have inspections. The processes are the same. The content is different. We have incident reviews, especially if it's worker comp. I mean, I'm sorry, especially if it's insurable, a potential insurable, or something we can charge back to a different sub or to somebody else. Okay, so we have incident investigations, same processes, different content. CI or yeah, CII Construction Industry Institute came out with this a study, well, a couple decades ago. It was zero injury techniques, talking about the most successful programs you have to have as your safety program. All of those were listed. One of those that were on that list is craft employee training. So is drug and alcohol testing, but
Right.
yeah, and some other things, pre-task planning and ongoing employee training. So the parallels on the processes are very, very similar. The content is different.
So for let's say like a smaller contractor where one person wears both hats or many hats, do you think that's actually an advantage in this situation when there is one person doing all of these things, or is it a disadvantage?
It would be size dependent.
Yeah.
Size dependent on the company, the project. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes there's just too much.
So I want to add something here, though, that I think is very beneficial for companies small and large to at least make sure that their safety professionals have a basic understanding of some of the most glaring quality concerns, because the safety professionals, even more so than some of the quality professionals, oftentimes are the ones that get to see every single project. Whereas oftentimes your quality professionals, unless you're an organization large enough to have a quality department that oversees your entire organization, they're stuck on one job and they
Right.
don't learn the lessons across projects. And that's where one of the things I always tried to do is if I was hearing about a quality issue on one of our job sites, I always tried to take that with me when I went to another job site if I saw something similar. And so I think it's important to have some cross-departmental knowledge sharing.
Yes. So, in the article, there's a case study about a board member discovering hidden costs in a copy room. He ran estimating and bidding. How common do you think that disconnect is, and how do organizations bridge it?
So I disconnect is probably not the word I'd use. I'd say wasn't exposed to it. Okay.
Okay.
I say that with due respect to this board member. Great man, loved working under him. I mean, he was absolutely intelligent. Um, so just to tell you what the story was is, and your financial people in the audience should appreciate this. Okay, so we put together an Excel spreadsheet, and I had an intern that year, and I sent that intern up to a couple of projects, and I had them meet with foreman who had reported a first report of injury. Okay, so this is a story about injury costs. Take out the word injury, put the word rework in. Same process,
Same.
different content. But this story happened to be about injuries. So I sent this intern up to the project. He spent a month meeting with foreman, filling out the questionnaire. How many hours did you spend? How many hours did your safety person spend? How many hours did your crew spend? And there's lots of information, lots of questions on it. What's the billing rate? We come up with a number, right? And so then I took those numbers and then I put a multiplier at the bottom of it and just math. And it was, if you work at 3% profit margin, how much work do you have to do to make up for that loss? Right. And then what I did is I took like the injury, like, I'm a visual person. I took the injury report. Oh, you can't see it. But I don't know. Took the injury report and I stapled behind it this completed Excel spreadsheet with the number at the bottom circled, and I stapled them together, and then I was clumping them by subcontractors. I was working for the general contractor at the time. And what I ended up doing was taking my business card and clamping them together, like with all of the incidents with the cost to the steel erector, to the mechanical contractor, to electrician, whatever, right? And my goal was, and which I did do, send it out to everybody just to raise the awareness of what this was costing everybody for the cost. Well, I was in the copy room making these copies to send out to the different people involved, different subcontractors, and staple them together. And in walks this VP of estimating. He was a board member, right? And he looks at me and says, and a great guy, and we had a great relationship. But he looks at me and says, "What's the safety person doing with an Excel spreadsheet?" Safety people are supposed to look at numbers. Well, there's your first problem. Safety
Right.
people should be able to talk to the CFOs of a company, and they need to talk in their language, which is dollars and cents, right?
Yep.
So I told him, and I handed him one of the forms that had a first report of incident. He turned it over, he looked at the numbers, looked at the bottom line, which was how much money we got to bill to make up for that loss. And he looks at it, and we had a subsidiary, concrete subsidiary on that project that said, "Hey, do you want to look at insert name of the contractors, our wholly owned subsidiary, concrete sub? You want to look at their losses?" He said, "Yes." So I handed him this packet, 8 or 9 or 10 reports, handed it to him. He took a minute, thumbed through it, looked at me and said, "I want a copy of everything of this." He just was never exposed to how much time we were spending in follow-up reports. Now, your financial people listening to this probably don't see those numbers because they're either buried in a labor report, or the people involved are all salary, right?
Yep.
What the funniest part about that story is that, I mean, that was an eye-opening. But the funniest part was actually when I sent it out to the subcontractors. Quite a few of them called back, and one of them called back, who I remember specifically. They were the steel erecting sub, and the number two guy at the company called me back, and he said, "Hey, how you doing? What's this?" I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" He said, "I think it's a butt chewing." And I said, "Well, okay." I said, "What does your, owner, name the guy who owned the business, what does he think it is?" He said, "He thinks it's a bill." He thought we were invoicing him for all this time. You know, but these are major companies. I mean, these companies are all, I mean, they're not $10 million a year businesses. One of these is $1 billion company. All the rest of them are in 50 to hundreds of millions of dollars in the billing range. These are not small companies.
So once leadership sees that number, what usually changes?
Well, after that, I pretty much had carte blanche on a budget. I can tell you that. You know, because when I showed them the numbers involved with how much time was being taken, and there's a line down there for other costs like OSHA costs, lawyer costs, legal costs. We can get into that a little bit if you want to, but the numbers are staggering. So whenever I wanted something, right up to hiring more staff, my literally it went from a compliance-based concept to a financial profit center.
Yeah,
And any of your audience who's familiar with CSIPs or OSIPs or captives, they understand that right off the bat.
and if I can add to that too, Laura, that conversation really was beneficial at the job site level for the job site supervisors who especially the foreman maybe who really didn't see the budget. But if you can convert those numbers into this is how many cubic yards of concrete you poured for free, that really gets a concrete superintendent's attention. He's like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean? I'm working for free?
So it's
Right.
about messaging.
Right, right. So know your audience, but at the job site level, that really helped change the conversation from compliance
Yep.
to best practices.
Is, is there a report that a financial leader could pull that would surface this not disconnect or whatever we're calling it to their own leadership? Like, is there a butt chewing report framework that we have or anything like that?
No, and that's the dilemma, Sal,
Right.
is nobody catches this.
Yeah.
Your audience right now is thinking, where do I get the numbers from?
Right.
The only way for you to get the numbers is either rely on the research, go to our webpage, and there's all kinds of references to research, or hire an intern, send them out there and do it yourself. And if anybody
Yeah.
wants some help and guidance how to do that, I'll gladly help them give guidance to what an intern should do. Or second of all, most of the financial people will probably wear a collar, get up, put the work shoes on, go out into the field, talk to a general, like a general superintendent or a general foreman, not somebody who comes from the college background, but someone who's worked their way up into management from the field perspective. Back to that story, we handle the stuff at the lowest level possible and make sure that the field person knows you're trying to learn. We're not out here to chew somebody's backside out. Like he or she in your financial group just wants to learn about what these costs really are. Yeah, there is no database of losses, which makes
Yeah.
this so hard. Is if I could pull up this database and say, hey, look at whatever, such and such a agency or insurance company did, but it's not insured. There's no regulation over rework like an OSHA,
Yeah.
right? Or a building code.
So I
Because
feel like we're kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
most of this stuff gets fixed long before the building inspector ever sees it.
Right.
So I was going to say, I feel like we're building towards this question, and Brian, you may have kind of already provided your answer, but looking from both of you, what is the single most actionable takeaway that a construction financial professional should implement immediately, given this information?
I'll let Kim answer it, but let me state if I was to have one request on that, I would say grab a worksheet, look at it, use it or don't use it. I don't care. Go into the field and get your own numbers. Don't trust me. Go talk to your people. Learn what the numbers are. And then we got a couple of really simple, inexpensive recommendations to start off. But your question is, what's the takeaway? What's the one thing you want them to remember? Don't trust me. Go get your own numbers.
Take the measurement,
Take the
basically.
measurements. Go measure yourself. I mean, if you took those measurements and went back to go to their project team. They don't even go to senior management. Just go to the project team and say, is this right? Close the door. Don't let any other contractors in the room. Don't let the owners in the room. Don't let the insurance people in the room. Whatever. Just have it you talk through your teams. Is this right? Kim, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think, most financial advisors for a large construction company, they're going to be involved in those monthly progress reports where the project team's coming in and they're talking about how the project's doing, right? Have a question up there on the top of that progress report about rework. Are we experiencing rework? Do we have a rework problem with a subcontractor? Do we have a quality problem with a subcontractor? Because in this industry, we are pushed to hire that lowest bidder. But if you start to add in the volume of rework or the additional oversight that you as a general contractor have to provide to a low performing subcontractor, we would do this with safety. Now, all of a sudden, that low bidder, they're not the low bidder. So,
Right.
having those conversations with your project management team when you're doing your monthly progress reports, I think also can start to help open that door to learning more about rework that is or isn't not happening at the job sites.
We had a project at a zoo where we were encouraged to use this subcontractor that different reasons. They had to replace the sidewalk 3 times because every time they poured it did not end up being ADA compliant. The owner would not let us do it and just pay the subcontractor. So you know what we did? On a federal holiday when the zoo was closed, we went in with our own crew and we did it. We never told anybody crap because
Wow.
they couldn't get the angles right. for the wheelchairs because it was on a hill and a slope. It was a tricky pour,
Right.
but the sub did it 3 times. We went back with our own crew when the owner wasn't around. That's rework.
Yeah.
That's actually quite a bit of a small example. And that's just looking at money. You know what they did to schedule, right? And people in your group, there's thousands of examples out there, right?
And in your experience, do you think there's one rework related cost that most financial professionals aren't tracking but should be?
Well, probably the easiest one for them to track is the legal costs.
Yeah.
The organization probably hires an attorney, especially if there's any kind of potential for a back charge or leading into a warranty issue. A good friend of mine is the owner rep for a very, very large Fortune 500 company on construction. And he and I were having breakfast, and it's been a month ago or whatever now. And this was the topic. And they have brought on an attorney who specializes in rework, $600 an hour. Now, that's not the only cost.
Right.
That's the owner rep. You have a general contractor, you have a subcontractor. So let's just for easy math say they're $500 an hour attorneys. We're looking at $1,500 an hour when they talk to each other. They each probably had 1 to 2 paralegals, so cut that bill in half, hourly rate in half, and they each probably had 1 or 2 clerical staff. That's an easy number for your financial people to get access to right now without even going anywhere. Just a legal cost. And that is one line item on this worksheet.
Right.
That's probably the largest hourly rate cost, with the exception of maybe a delay. If there's liquidated damages for schedule delay, that can be huge. And just as a side note for anybody listening from the insurance perspective, the number 3 reason for subcontractor default, according to a friend of mine who's in brokers in this world, is quality. First is financial, second is labor supply, and third is non-quality work performed by the subcontractor. So it's the number 3rd reason for subcontractor default.
So your story about the sidewalk and what you're just talking about now is making me wonder if we should change the way that we pre-qualify subcontractors. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So there are there's 3 or 4 big pre-qualification software companies out there. They're really good if you appreciate what you're asking them to do. Generally, you're asking them to ensure that certain verifiable information is accurate, and they have certain written programs. They verify the EMR is accurate. They verify you have a safety program with lots of chapters and certain verbiage. You verify you look at OSHA 300 logs. Okay. Doesn't verify hardly at all what's in the field, what happens in the field, how they implement it, and more importantly, is not project specific. So having a corporate pre-qualification that as a subcontractor to work anywhere in the company, if you're GC or a sub that hires subs, one of those programs are great as long as you understand the limitations of the information you're getting. You are not getting anything project specific. And if there's enough exposure there from safety, risk, public exposure, business interruption, you should have a pre-qualification program a pre-qualification process that is specific to the project. That would be in addition to these programs, these online programs. But you absolutely, my opinion, should not ever rely on that as the only pre-qualifier.
For you both, what's a healthy lessons learned culture actually look like day to day?
May I take that, Brian?
No, I was going to let you take it. You're more of that. Well, let me answer it, and then Kim is a lot more versed at that than I am. Let's give you an example. End of year CEO, end of year meeting. Okay, end of year company party, end of year company, bring in everybody. CEO gets up in front, and let's pick on the negative part. The CEO talks about how one project failed, injuries, business interruption, quality control, whatever, and you notice that project superintendent's not there. There's a pretty good indicator that the corporate culture is to keep your mouth closed and not report unless you absolutely have to. Now, if the same company and the same leadership brings the project team in and they put on a little presentation about this went wrong and this is the lessons learned and everybody should learn from it so we don't have that issue again. And then the CEO comes in with some positive comments at the end, excuse me, says something, great lesson learned. I don't want anybody to have the same mistake. If somebody's not here, and then the CEO or whoever, boss person encourages projects to cross communicate with losses to learn from each other. That's a positive. That's a positive culture. You will learn from your lessons learned. You will grow. You will absolutely grow.
So there needs to be a culture of psychological safety for them to.
Precisely.
Hun-
At all levels. And
Right.
while we're seeing a big push with psychological safety because we've connected it to physical safety, there's still a huge disconnect between what large organizations' top leadership thinks their job site cultures are and what's really the job site culture. And so, there's always this saying of what gets measured, what gets measured gets done. And when you're in that monthly progress report meeting, you're moving through quickly. So what are you looking at? You're looking at budget, you're looking at schedule. And so the people in the field, they get that message, and that's the only thing that matters to them. And so they don't want to hear about a mistake. So you do have to create this learning environment where when we do have an honest mistake that could be repeated by someone else, that we can create this safe environment where somebody, man, I installed that valve wrong. I didn't realize it because when I look at it, it was kind of marked funny. And you can share those opportunities. I can't tell you the number of times that when I was working for a general contractor, we hired somebody to come in and scan a slab because we needed to do some drilling and it was a PT slab and we needed to make sure we didn't hit those post tendons. And somebody scanned it from the top and drilled from the bottom and hit the post in it. Just that simple communication message. And because nobody wanted to talk about it, that happened here and here and here and here. And culture is really important. I always go back to this story of where our concrete superintendent, our general superintendent kept button heads. General superintendent says, you're going to make that pour on X date. You're going to make that pour. And the concrete superintendent's like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. They hated each other so much that the concrete superintendent let the general superintendent pour the concrete slab with 50% of the embeds gone. That's a major rework issue. Not only is it a rework issue, but is it a structural issue that you now have to have the structural engineer look at because their culture was so toxic they couldn't sit down and work it out. So
there's
sorry, go ahead, Brian.
no, so there's a really good slogan that you hear at airports these days. What is it?
See
See something, say something.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And in the safety culture of good companies, you will have an electrician go to a pipe fitter and say, hey, buddy, don't step on the top rung of the step ladder, whatever. Right. And usually those two licensed trades aren't that love huggy to each other. Okay. That is a great culture. So if you can get and some companies have done a marvelous job of this. If you see something, say something. It doesn't matter if they work for a different employer. It doesn't matter if they're a different trade. It doesn't matter if they're an apprentice or a journeyman. See something, say something. We don't have that yet necessarily. If we do, it's very rare in the quality control. Another example, like Kim's, I was involved with building a high-rise condo project, 40 some odd stories high. Okay, so as we went up, the real estate, we finished off the lower buildings. So at this stage where this incident happened, we had the bottom 6 floors sold and occupied. We were on floor 8 or 9, and somebody noticed that the wallboard behind the toilets was not green board. now probably most people in this audience, because your expertise is financial, is that's a code violation. The board behind the toilet has a potential to be exposed to water, has to be green board. We were finished out to like floor 14 or something with wall board, not green board behind the toilets. That's not a big deal. We have a whole bunch of people work extra to replace it. A lot of money. What is the big deal? The big deal was the knock on the door to all the units that paid 600 and some odd dollars a square foot to buy these condos at lower level, saying, hey, we need you to move out for a couple of weeks so we can come in and fix the mistake. That's where the loss was, right? Can you imagine that if you spent that kind of money for the condo and now you're thinking, what else did they screw up on? There's the loss.
Yeah. So when we talk about building that actual psychological safety to report rework instead of burying it, in the article you recommended weekly quality meetings alongside safety meetings, but beyond, let's say, the meeting itself, what do you think separates a team that just checks the box from one that's generally changed its culture?
I'll go back to the example we just had. They see something, they don't say anything.
Yeah,
On that
just
drywall
goes through.
project, how many people saw that? Every one of the drywallers saw that. Every one of the superintendents for the drywall company saw that. Every one of the field engineers and superintendents for the general contractor saw that. Building inspector saw that. There was no see something,
Mhm.
say something. It was,
I think we have to create this culture of shared responsibility, like Brian's example.
Yeah,
The mechanical sub talking to the electrician, the plumber talking to the electrician. Um, that's really important. And that, no matter who your CEO is, that culture starts at the job site with the general superintendent. And the owners play a role in that as well. We have to have an environment where we can sit down and listen to somebody who's walking in the door and saying, I have a problem, no matter what that problem is. If we don't have time for them, mistakes get buried, safety hazards get buried, people move on.
probably
yeah,
the one of the best examples I've seen of this is recently at the Portland International Airport. It's a huge project, 7, 8 year project. Okay. Rebuilding a whole bunch of the work, including the terminal, passengers, airplanes, all over the place. There were a couple of near misses, no impacts, a couple of near misses. The owner shut the job site down to have a safety stand down for I think it was 2 days. Tell me any other owner in the United States that has ever done that
yeah,
for near miss. That is an unbelievable culture. It's amazing. That's where the owner steps in.
How can the
Think,
CFO participate in that?
I'm sorry,
How can the CFO or controller be part of that?
learn the numbers. My opinion from a financial standpoint, they have the biggest opportunity of anybody. If you want to have a driver of this, is the financial person talking to everybody from the field level to the CEO to the board of directors to the stockholders to your owners from a marketing standpoint. You are looked at as a financial person in the company. You're respected because you know numbers. If I stand up and gave those numbers, people are going to respect me because of my reputation. If the CEO your member who's a financial person at a construction company stands up and say it, they're going to be respected because of the office they hold. And they say, where we got the numbers? I got the numbers off of these 5 projects of our projects. If I had a request to improve quality in the industry, chief financial officers deliver the message
Mhm.
because it's about money. Now they should
yeah.
have a team, do it with the risk manager, do it with the
Right.
contract manager, do it with the production people. But the financial people in the organization, this is a financial impact. You and the risk manager, hand in hand, deliver the message with your numbers. The prevention is easy. Prevention is easy, but the financial people that your audience right now, they're, in my opinion, the best person to deliver the message because it's numbers.
Right. And you write that people learn more from their mistakes than successes. How do you think a leader creates an environment where a mistake becomes a teaching moment more than a blame moment? I struggle this with my 15-year-old, so I would also need your opinion on that. Just for this though.
I would say it's how they respond.
Yeah.
It's how they respond. If they respond in a positive mode, discipline's always good. Somebody had the same issue happen two or three times. They like you're probably not a teenager, but a spanking not for hurt, but for discipline is not a bad thing,
Right.
right? Part of its successful safety program includes discipline. As a matter of fact, Cal OSHA in their injury and illness prevention plan requirements, the requirement in Cal OSHA in the safety accident prevention program is the disciplinary action program has to end in dismissal. So discipline is not a bad thing. It's how you approach discipline. If you started off using a bunch of colorful metaphors and making a team or an individual, feel like a second-class citizen, for lack of a better word, yeah, you got called, you got bigger problems. But if you come in and look at it as, hey, we need to learn from this, et cetera, that's a positive. That would be a company that's going to grow and people and where I'd want to work.
And I think if you add on to that, if you create the culture where somebody can come in and say, "Well, I just made this big mistake," then if you can take that and include the person who made the mistake in investigating and discovering why they made the error and what the right thing to do was, and then being part of the team to share that lesson learned. Now you also gave that employee who's thinking they're going to get in trouble, who's thinking they're probably going to get disciplined, you've now further educated that employee, and they're going to be more willing to come speak up when they see something next time. They're part of the solution, but they're going to share that lesson in the field for years to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a big project I was involved with down in Arizona. It was a fab manufacturing plant. Um, and the superintendent's testimonial at new employee orientations was, if I see you, without fall protection, I will walk you off the site. But if you see something, and he brought up quality control, this concrete. If you see we're not braced right, if you see we don't have the rebar right, you have the authority, even as an apprentice, to stop the pour. I want you to stop the pour. I'm telling you, you have the authority to stop the pour. Amazing projects. But the superintendent made it clear, I'd rather have you mad at me and you go home because I don't want you injured, but you have the complete authority to stop something if it's not right. If it's not right. But it was 100% culture.
Yeah.
100% culture. Had nothing to do with more safety people, more quality control people, more programs and processes and computers. It had to do with the culture of the superintendent saying, I don't want you hurt, and you have the authority.
Yeah. That's literally see something, say something, right? Like it's all comes back to that.
It all comes back to that.
Yeah.
And the airport security system has been using it for decades. And when I asked you guys that question 10 minutes ago, you both knew the answer.
No, yeah. Yeah. That's great messaging.
So we've got
Lindsay,
about
oh,
10 minutes left. Wanted to make sure there was nothing that we did not touch on that you wanted to raise.
Us?
Yes.
yeah.
Oh,
Or Sal, whatever.
I didn't know if that was for us or for your audience. Um, I guess I would just kind of bring up again that don't believe us. Take our worksheet off our webpage. Go out, learn your own numbers, and then you're going to have that aha moment that, wow, I'm glad I listened the 51 minutes to this webinar because the numbers are staggering. Even if you go on the low end of a $50 million project, we're putting $5 million into the budget. We've already budgeted for it. One of my clients is a drywall contractor. We had this conversation, and he admitted to me on a project that requires 100 sheets, they deliver 110. It's built into the budget. Just think if you could knock that down to 5%. We just made $2.5 million on top of our fee. There's nothing your financial people can do to make that kind of profit, except go find out the numbers, see if you believe this, and if you do, there's some simple things to do. That would be probably my thought request for your readers or listeners in this case is don't believe me, go get your own numbers.
We have a question from Michelle in the chat asking, where can the members find your reference spreadsheet?
I should have had you guys. So it's on our website.
We can send it around after when we send the recording, we can send a link to it as well.
Yep. So on the website, there's two worksheets. The first worksheet is under the quality drop down, and it literally says quality control worksheet, and it's nothing fancy. It's an Excel spreadsheet, but you can use it online, and you can fill in the numbers online, and then you have an email option, and you can email that report right to yourself or to whoever you want to. There's the exact same thing for employee injury under the safety drop down. And if you want a little bit of explanation, there's two podcasts with two different clients of ours that actually we worked through it to show people how to go through it if you want a little bit more advice. But it's really simple to use. It's literally an Excel spreadsheet. Your people in your audience right now know Excel way better than I do. So, it's yeah.
Okay.
Kim, anything add to that?
Just when somebody does come to you as the financial manager, financial advisor, and they want to have a conversation about needing a little bit of funding to try something new, I hope you can give them 5 minutes and listen. We didn't get a chance to talk about training and apprenticeships, but the industry is finally changing. We are finally starting to embrace more technology. And your workers out there at the field, they're going to need to know that technology. And if they're not learning it from a union apprenticeship program, where are they learning it? And they might need some funding from you to make sure they're learning how to use it right. Because if you're not using a GPS driven piece of equipment correctly and you get something at the wrong grade, the whole building could be wrong. And that could be a massive rework. So just embrace this learning culture, and it's going to take some funding, and some of that funding is not going to be paid for by the job sites.
So let me add on to that. I had a conversation with a vice president of a very large construction company where once a month I put on a dinner for the superintendents and put on breakfast for the foreman, and we did this training. And it was kind of sminty. Okay. The vice president called me up and he said, and this is years ago, and another different VP, but a great guy. I'd followed this guy anywhere, just an absolutely great vice president, right? And he talked to me and said, "Hey, Brian, we really need to cut back this training. We need to, this is costing too much. We lost a couple of big projects. We just don't have it." And I said, person's name, said, "The only thing more expensive than training somebody and losing them is not training them and not losing them."
Yeah.
Training is a huge thing. But it doesn't have to be huge as far as cost dollars go. What ours is add 2 minutes to your weekly safety meeting to talk about quality. And there's some examples on the webpage if somebody wants to see them. It's safety on one side, quality on the other. And the quality has to be trade specific. You don't want to talk about quality control on electrical safety to an iron worker. They don't care. It's like talking to an iron worker about electrical hot work. It doesn't matter, and they have tuned out.
All right. You think any more questions in the chat, Lindsay? Or are we good?
No more questions and comments, but if anyone has any last minute ones, you can pop those in right now.
And I did post the website, so you can
Thank you, Laura.
visit that easily, but we will send it out in the follow-up as well.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Good.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us, and a very special thanks to Brian and Kim for sharing their expertise and real-world experience on such an important topic. Rework is often treated as an operational issue, but today it showed how much it touches profitability, risk, safety, and overall performance. So we appreciate your time and participation.
Yeah, hopefully it's a lot harder for everyone to ignore, but thank you all for joining us on Behind the Pages. We'll be back next time with another article, another set of amazing authors, and another chance to go deeper into the issues shaping construction finance. So keep an eye on your inbox for what's next. And until then, see something, say something. Hopefully I don't get sued if that's like trademarked or anything, uh, and we'll see you with another CFMA Building Profits next time. So thanks for everyone joining.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you.
Thank you.
Right.